In this lecture, we're going to go through a statistical procedure called the Mann Whitney U test. The letter U refers to the statistic that is generated in order to evaluate statistically significant differences. And this test is designed for two independent groups, and that's what we see in this hypothetical study. So here we have 10 research participants that were exposed to two different conditions. We had 5 participants uh, that were assigned to a group that evaluated reaction time in response to a red signal on a computer screen. Then we had a different group of 5 individuals that were evaluated for reaction time to a signal on a computer screen that was black. And the outcome variable or dependent measure here in this case was reaction time. And because of the very small number of research participants that we see here, we might want to use a non-parametric statistical procedure, and that's what I'm going to do here. And that procedure is the Mann Whitney U test. So to do this in SPSS, I'm going to go up to Analyze. Then I'm going to go down to Non-Parametric Tests, and I'm going to click Legacy Dialogues. And under Legacy Dialogues, I want to select 2 independent samples. So remember, these are 2 separate groups of completely different individuals. So I click 2 independent samples to set this up. Now here is where I define my test variable. So my outcome variable is reaction time, and I just move that over. The grouping variable, as you can see here by group, I'm going to pull this over, but in SPSS I need to define those groups. And so what you see here, we have them defined as red and black, but SPSS is looking for a numerical distinction. So I need to click Define Groups, and I'm going to enter in 0 for red and 1 for black, and I continue. So under options, I can click descriptive statistics. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that here. And I'm just going to stick with the Mann Whitney U test. So we see with SPSS there are a number of different statistical procedures, but I'm just going to stick with the Mann Whitney U test in this lecture. So I'm going to hit OK, and as you can see at the very top, we have our summary for our descriptive statistics. Now when you use this option in SPSS, the default here is to not differentiate the 2 groups. So here we see an overall reaction time average and the standard deviation, and you see a fairly large range in reaction time. Now, in terms of the ranks here, so the Mann Whitney U test will take an interval or ratio type of data that we have in reaction time and convert those to ranks, and we see higher rankings for larger scores, larger reaction times, longer reaction times for the black stimulus versus the red stimulus. In order to evaluate the statistical significance, on the bottom table here, what we're looking for is the Mann Whitney U statistic, and here we see a value of 2.0, and we compare that against a critical value that you don't see illustrated here on the output, so you would need to go to a table to find that critical value. But SPSS will generate the two-tailed level of significance, and you can see here it's 0.028, and since usually our type 1 error rate is often set at 0.05, being less than 0.05, we can say these results are statistically significant, meaning that the groups have different reaction times overall. Now, before we end this video, I'm going to do one more analysis, and I'm going to analyze the data as ratio data. So recall that with a non-parametric statistical approach, what we're doing with interval data or ratio data is we're converting those to ranks. But I'm going to go ahead and reanalyze these data, and I don't have to go back to my original spreadsheet. So I'm going to go to comparing means and proportions. And the parametric counterpart is the independent samples t-test. So I'm going to run an independent samples t-test. Once again, I'm going to take reaction time as my test variable, and I'm going to place my grouping variable that I need to define once again, and I need to change this because this is a default of 1 and 2, and I'm going to go 0 and 1 since that's how I defined it in my original spreadsheet. I hit continue, and under options, the options will select the confidence interval percentage. So I'm just going to continue, and I just hit OK. And when you do this in SPSS, the first statistical test of the non-parametric Mann Whitney U test is retained, and the next set of results are appended to the bottom of the file. So with the t-test, we see that this approach will calculate the descriptive statistics for the two groups separately in terms of the mean standard deviation and standard error of the mean. And what we want to look for here is the t-test for equality of means. And since we usually go with a two-sided level of statistical significance, what we see here is that the results are consistent with the non-parametric approach in that we have an outcome where the p-value is less than 0.05. The reason we have two p-values here is that SPSS will analyze these data assuming that the variances between the two groups are not statistically different, or we assume that they are statistically different. So either way here, we see that the p-value tells us that there is a statistically significant difference in reaction time between the two groups. And to know which group had the longer reaction time, we just go and evaluate the mean. So here we see that the group that was exposed to a black stimulus on a computer screen took longer to recognize and react to it than the red signal on the computer screen, and we can now state that this result is statistically significant. So this ends this video on the Mann Whitney U test.